G'day everyone and welcome to the GameDay Squad Aussie Rules Fantasy Show. I'm Pitty and alongside Haz, we are the Fantasy Bros. We've partnered with GameDay Squad to bring you everything you need to know to succeed in GDS Aussie Rules this season. And for this episode, I'll be joined by Bales from the AFL Fantasy Fanatics. Bales, how you going, mate? And thanks for joining the live round 2 preview show.
Beautiful, mate. Thanks for having me. Yeah, going all right. Yeah, sort of tougher week around the fantasy circles last week, I think, for a lot of people, with especially having Errol, right? We have Errol, miss him out for all last year, and then we have him in our game day squads, and he unfortunately gets injured, which sucks for him in Sydney, but thankfully still put up a solid score. But yeah, not too bad, mate. The best thing about game day squad, though, right? You just start again, round 2, do the same squad. So looking forward to it, mate. And thanks for having me on.
That's it. No worries at all. Thanks for joining as well. I'm keen to get your insights as well to see what our plan is this week. So before we get into it, mate, just to kick off the episode and preview all the action, just to make sure everyone that you've subscribed to all of our Fantasy Bros socials so that you don't miss a thing this season. We're on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, TikTok, Facebook, Insta. Just make sure you search at Fantasy Bros AU. And of course, if you're a new coach, it's not too late for you to get started in Game Day Squad. As Bales mentioned there, you can play week by week and there's heaps of prizes up for grabs. So just make sure you download the app today or visit the Game Day Squad website, create the account and use that promo code FBAR26 and you'll be rewarded with 3 9-player common packs just for doing so. Now, Bales, you talked about your round and how it went. So we want to talk about how our round went as well. We'll go around the grounds. We'll talk about sort of where we finished in the competitions. And of course, we've got on screen there who our stars were and who, unfortunately, scarred our squads as well. So I'll let you think about those in a moment. But just kick us off again in terms of how you went last round. Was it a bit of a disappointing one, as you mentioned there? Like, what was your sort of finishing typically in the competitions?
Yeah, it was disappointing because I thought that overall, like I was chatting to Cal about this as well, and overall my squad did well, but when I look at the ranking, it wasn't as good, right? So I played most Classic and Challenger, probably the two ones I'd have the best, put my best players in, particularly Classic as well, and finished 59th and 60th, which isn't too bad, right? But I like to be finishing. I want to see my name on the little top 20 coaches for the week in the leaderboard. So it was disappointing not to be there. And then sort of, I think my best finish for the week was in the Stats Labs Prime Time, which I 41st for that. So I'll take a top 50 finish there at least. But yeah, unfortunately, no sort of top 20 finishes to get those real good rewards for the week.
Yeah, it was tough, wasn't it? It was just that really high scoring week. And it was very similar, I think, across that Contender, Classic and Challenger competition, sort of in a very similar range to you. Contender, I was sort of I was 39th for the week, so a little bit better there. But I just missed a couple of really high scores, like a Bontempelli, for example. That was probably the toughest watch I've ever had in my entire life, not having a Bontempelli and watching him do what he did. It was absolutely torture, and I couldn't wait for that game to end. So yeah, I didn't have too many sort of poor scores, but it was just missing a couple of those ceiling scores. So that's all right. 16th in 22s was probably the thing I'll cling to this week, and has still finished 11th in Challenger. So he was pretty happy with that. I've also got the GDS Classic Cup kicking off this week in Aussie Rules. So that's super exciting. For those who are unaware, the Cup's our head-to-head knockout competition. If you win your matchup that week, you progress on to the next round until only one coach remains. Bales, I'm up against Rockets this week. Who have you got?
That is a good question. I did have a quick peek at who I did. I'll just pull up the email. The good thing is with I think it was last year. Normally when we have the cup, you have to go to the website and you have to sort of go through the week and see where you are. Whereas the good thing is it's just an email and it says who you're playing up against. So I'm up against Long G Cats is who I'm up against this week. So Long G, I hope I can get the job done against you this week because I don't want to get knocked out in the first week. That's but I don't think any of us want to, right? So I think we all want to get at least a couple of weeks to get those nice pack rewards.
We've been there before, though, haven't we? I reckon I've been knocked out really early in pretty much every cup so far. So we'll see what we can do this week in Aussie Rules, and hopefully we can get a little bit further along. That would be very nice. And we'll go through, mate, our stars and our scars. And Nate Daddies, he joins us. G'day, mate. Yes, Bontempelli was a scar for us this week because we both didn't play him. And I don't know why we didn't in the end, really. We should just be playing the best players. We had a few others we really liked and probably didn't think he'd sort of put up that score on our heads. And yeah, I think that I was just watching the week slip away from me in that first game on the Saturday. So absolutely torturous. And my other scar there was Christian Salem too. I I was pretty keen on him in terms of that pod play, and I was trying to think about who am I going to leave out. I was really keen on Lockie Ash, so it was really nice to see he went well. He was my star. But yeah, Christian Salem just putting up that 92 from memory, just it's not enough. And I chose not to play Zorko. So did Haz. We thought surely James Jordan goes to him. He had a quiet first half, so it was looking pretty good. But then he puts up a 100-point second half, and just made us look silly in the end. So yeah, a bit disappointing there with Christian Salem. And obviously Baz Smith. We backed him in the next week, and he puts up a nice 155. So he was also another star for us. Have you got someone that stood out for you, mate, in terms of starring for your squads and who scarred your squads?
Yeah, I do. I will say I was also on the fading Zorko train. I was like, Jordan will go to him surely. Like anyone that's up against Brisbane, you go, well, if you got a half forward tagger, it's just obvious, right? But didn't happen.
Yeah.
So thankfully, I was watching the Crows game at the exact same time, so I didn't have to put myself through the pain of watching him. Unlike you, obviously, you said with Bont going well there. Probably say my star. I think a lot of the players I played were quite popular. They would have been against a lot. I think the one unique I had, and I will give him a shout out for a good score, was actually Dylan Moore with the 119. I put the bronze in my squad, and I thought he had a poor one the week before. Essendon's a better matchup. Back at the G, I thought a wide open ground where we get those +7s, and he got plenty of them and scored the 119. So I'll probably give him myself, which is probably a bit unique. I think a lot of people would have said, oh, you might give it to Shees or something like that. But I thought, no, I'll go to someone a bit more unique. The scar, unfortunately, was the pod that I played instead of Dane Zorko, and that was Miles Bergman. Like I thought Bergman against North Melbourne. I thought Rosie at half back. I thought Bergman play midfield, go quite well, be unique. And unfortunately, didn't do that. So I had Bergman in over Zorko, and I didn't have Ash in as well. So that was sort of a double whammy. That I had two massive scores and I had a poor one. And that unfortunately is probably why in Classic I ended up finishing, 59th for the week. 59th. I probably would have gone top 30, top 20 if I'd just had one of those better defenders in. But unfortunately, not the case. Also, shout out to Max Gawn as well, who I did put in over Grundy, who would have been quite popular. And then Jackson, who went well the day before. Gorney actually put up a pretty solid score the day after.
Yeah, nice. A lot of names there you've mentioned, mate, that I'm sure we'll be talking about in this episode. And we've got Ross in the chat there. G'day, Ross. Thanks again for joining us, mate. He faded Bailey Smith due to round 0 and that score he put up. So, yeah, absolutely. That is a big scar. And Nate Daddies as well says Mitch Georgiades was his. So against the North Melbourne side, you'd think he'd get some good opportunity. But I think that whole game, sort of the script we thought it was going to follow, it just got flipped on its head, didn't it? We probably didn't see that one happening. And Silver Pigeon as well, missed out on Ash. There were just so many good defenders in particular to pick last week and mids as well that it just took one to miss and then you were off, unfortunately.
Exactly.
But, mate, we'll move on as well. We'll have a look at round 2. As we said, we're going to move on and start looking at the week ahead and hopefully get back on that leaderboard in that top 20, which is where we want to be. And these are the fixtures we'll be talking about tonight. So in terms of that Thursday and Friday night matchup, so we've got 4 teams playing 2 games. So that's the Thursday night game is the Hawks and the Swans at the MCG, which should be a really good game. And then Friday night, probably the blockbuster. I reckon it's the Crows, your boys, up against the Doggies.
I'll be there. I
hope you'll be cheering a few of them on for us.
I can't wait. It's always loved the first game of the year, particularly with I went to when the Crows weren't great as well. I went to every game, but you get that bit more excitement when your team is playing well and getting wins, and hopefully we can get another win. It should be a cracking game. Thilthorpe one end, Sam Darcy the other. Dawson, Bont, Stars are plenty. So, and I think we'll have a few of them in our squad as well.
Oh, 100%. We'll be talking about a lot of those players. So a couple of good fixtures for that primetime competition. And then the Saturday fixtures, we've got the Suns up against the Tigers. That'll be down in Melbourne at the MCG. We have the Giants against the Saints, which could be another fantasy relevant game there. And then Saturday night, we have the Dockers hosting the Demons over in Perth as well to round out the Saturday fixtures. And Sunday, our Fantasy Bros Sunday Showdown, we've got Power up against the Bombers and the Eagles up against the Kangaroos. So it's going to be a very interesting squad that we're rolling out in that Sunday competition, that's for sure.
The best thing about this round as well, there's no overlaps either. We get to watch all, well, I don't believe there is. No, there's not. So we get to watch all the games if you're enoughy like me and sit down and watch all the games over the weekend.
Yeah, that's what we want, isn't it? And Dill's in the chat as well, our resident fantasy bro there from the league side of things. Did someone say Jackson? We did say Jackson, and I cannot wait to talk about big Lukey Jackson later on. Dill just packed his all-star,
Whew.
I believe yesterday from memory, I think it was. So he's very happy with that. That's a great pull. So, mate, we'll jump on. We'll start having a look at our line-by-line previews. And just for our viewers, we've actually changed up how we're sort of doing that each week. So on screen, rather than talking about those top players, we're starting to put them into a box there on screen. You can see they're our plug-and players. So we think that those players you could pretty comfortably play each week or most weeks. And we're going to then talk through another 3 options you can think about for round 2 or that particular round. We'll give you 2 points of difference, and we'll give you 1 to avoid as well. And we'll talk through a few of these players on screen in a second there, Bales. In terms of those plug and plays, those, particularly for those who might be listening on through Apple Music or Spotify, the players we think you can be plugging into your side this week pretty comfortably will be your Jack Sinclair, who's in incredible form, Lockie Ash, who's in incredible form as well, Connor Rozee, Lockie Whitfield, and Nazaya Wanganeen-Millera, who is, some people might think, can we be plugging and playing him? I think we can. I think that it's probably riskier not to play him. I think I learned last week with Dane Zorko, right? If I think something might be happening, I should probably keep them in my side, but just maybe lower the salary if that's the case and distribute that elsewhere. That's probably a safer play. I had Mianji Gaming. He was in my messages today in Discord, and we had this sort of conversation, and that was my answer to him was I think you're probably better off playing Naz, particularly with the Classic Cup kicking off. He'll be very, very popular. And if he puts up a big score and you've got someone else, like that could spell the end to your cup pretty quickly. So I still have him there, even though he's a bit out of form. And obviously you can see who's on the bye this week. That is Dane Zorko and Josh Dacos. And that's actually probably something I didn't touch on before. Those teams who are on a bye in these fixtures, we've got Carlton, Collingwood, Geelong, and the Lions. So make sure none of those players are in your squads this week. They are not playing. This is the first of a handful of bye rounds, these early bye rounds to start off the season, just because of opening round. So that's why on that screen there, you'll find Josh Dacos and Dane Zorko. We're not playing them this week because they are on the bye. Anything just to add to that, Bales, before we get into some of those options on screen?
I don't think so. I think you've covered it really well. I think we can get into some of these options.
Sounds good. If Naz goes poor, are we going to finally get off him this week? I'm going to say no. I'm going to hold really firm there. That's probably me being super stubborn. I think other coaches might be looking at it, but that's my stance on that, Bales. How do you sit with that?
Yeah, I'm still backing him in. I still feel like there's they've got St Kilda got that lever to pull where they can just play Nasai back at halfback / mid instead of I don't know. I feel like he is a bit wasted off of half forward. I know that he kicked those goals against Melbourne and he can go forward and kick those goals, but he's not a Bont, Dawson, Heaney type player where they go forward and can take all these contested marks and play against a key defender. I know he's got obviously the pace and everything like that, but I just think he's much more dynamic when he gets a bit of mid-time, but also plays off halfbacks. Like the amount of times he'll get the kick in and he'll get probably 3 touches just for the kick in. You get another touch running by, kick it again, then get another handball receive, and all of a sudden you're racking up the points. So I think if St Kilda do decide to do it, could be as early as this week, just because they're not getting anything out of him. He's kicking a couple of goals. He's having his 15 to 20 touches, but just with this attention, he's just not getting involved as much. Whereas he plays off half-back, is there many taggers that can play forward that can also follow him, and that means you've probably got to sacrifice a player from the opposition to shut him down. So I wonder if they do pull that lever at some point.
It will be interesting. And like, obviously the Saints haven't won a game, right? So what they're doing is not currently working. And they may need to find a few different ways to see if they can get that win. In terms of the other defenders we can be playing this week, we've picked out a few there. And John Noble is one that I think should be a pretty solid play this week. We played him in opening round for his 130 odd, I think from memory, 138 potentially. He had 136 was his score. We weren't super keen on him last week with that West Coast matchup. We thought that, and he still scored all right. He put up a 101, but we just thought the Suns would sort of dominate out of that midfield, which they did. They really torched the West Coast Eagles there at home. And 101, not bad. It was better than Salem's 92, but it's also not that ceiling score that's going to sort of get you up onto that podium. So he's back into our contention this week, and in fact, he's back into all our squads. We really like him, particularly with those players on the bye. And the Tigers should be a pretty good matchup too, Bales, I reckon. When the Suns played them last year in round 6 and round 21, Noble put up scores of 125 and 136 GDS points. And in both of those games, he had 20 plus kicks. And that 136 point game, it included 10 marks. So we know that the Tigers, they do give up lots of points to opposition defenders, and in fact, it's just opposition players in general. The Stats Lab data we had from last season, they gave up 12 points above that league average. So I just think from all points, it should be a really good play this week, and someone who I'm probably happy to put a bit of salary on as well. Are you happy with that John Noble play this week, mate? Have you looked at that for your squads?
Yep, yeah, John Noble's in for me. I do like the matchup, and particularly with Zorko, Dacos, we can maybe throw Dan Houston as well. He might be someone that we've got to play more post his bye. A few guys that are out. So I think that and that's the good thing about these buys, right, is that the buys mean that you have to probably play a couple of guys that you don't normally play in your squads. And I think that makes for a bit of variety, which is good. And John Noble's someone that's top of my list and currently sitting in my squad. And I'm pretty happy to play in there against the Tigers.
Yeah, nice. That's an interesting point you raised about Dan Houston as well. He was someone who we saw that pop score in opening round, and I wanted to watch in round one. I didn't have the guts to play him again. Just I wanted to see if that was there a second time, and it was. So he's looking like someone we can play. And speaking of someone that we can watch as well, Jordan Clark is another one who I wanted to watch last week against the Cats. Have you got any initial thoughts on Jordan Clark, mate, as a potential option in our squads? And I'm obviously probably alluding there to the Freo game plan and what that might look like, and if we could maybe expect a really good score from Jordan Clark, or if he might be a bit of a reliable pick for us, because I think he'll be pretty popular across squads this week.
Yeah, I besides Luke Jackson, I'm off Freo. I just the game style, the point scoring for us, it's just not what we want. And Jordan Clark, unfortunately, is a bit of a victim of that. We saw a couple of years ago when Freo just chipped around. Him and Luke Ryan just went absolutely nuts. But at the moment, it's pretty much just go, and there's no chipping. There's no real sort of like sustained possession. They sort of go forward and they'll kick goals, or they'll turn it over. So that's just not going to be conducive to our game day squad point scoring week to week. So I do like other options better than him. If Freo shift at all this year, then I think he comes back. But I think until that happens, he's probably off my list, just because he'll have some good scores, right? Because he's a good player and he's the number one kick and take while Ryan's not there, and going to dominate possession out there, but just not going to be high enough of a ceiling. He's sitting capped just with that Freo game slot at the moment.
Yeah, I agree with you, mate. And Nate Daddies has got that comment on screen there. He didn't like Clark last week on that skinny ground, and he should go better at Optus. I completely agree with that. I think that he will be better. I think he'll still be a good pick. He'll be putting up a pretty solid score. But yeah, if you go back to that time where he and Luke Ryan would wax, back in 2024, so they played the Demons. It was Jordan Clark who put up 195 GDS points, which was 27 kicks and 15 marks plus a goal. And in the same game, Luke Ryan put up 166 points from 18 marks. Like, it was absolutely ridiculous. And then, obviously we had JL come out and say there's absolutely none of that happening. And we saw a pretty significant shift in the way they move the footy. And I think the thing that scares me most is actually what happened last week. The fact they left Luke Ryan out of the side just reiterates the point about what JL wants. And it's not to be, chipping the footy around and maintaining possession. It's we want to go in and we want to attack and move that ball quickly. And we know that's not conducive to having a really high fantasy score. So I like him this week in terms of the fact he's a safe play and a solid play, and he's the key distributor. But my questions are there better options that have a higher ceiling? So, yeah, I think we're probably in agreement there, Bales, on that one. Hey,
yeah, exactly.
And have you, anything about Luke Ryan? Like, I actually didn't hear too much about why he was omitted or what he's likely to do in that side. Have you heard anything about Luke Ryan?
I think it's just he had a limited preseason and he's just working his way back. So may have some weeks in the waffle, work his way back. So and I think Jale just said he's not in the best 22 with the limited preseason. So I guess we'll have to see when he comes back in. But I'm sure at some point he'll be back.
Yeah, and we'll keep an eye on that. Hey. Janeth is in the chat too. G'day, Janeth. Good to see you there, mate. And yeah, congrats to Pitty on the win. I got my first win in the BroDown ShowDown. It's been a long time coming. And so we'll talk about that a bit later. But yeah, I was very happy with that over the weekend. That was probably my one shining light, was the fact I won that competition between Haz and myself. Yeah, mate, back onto those defenders there. Jaden Short just rounding out as a potential pick. He had a great game last week. He had a huge score of 140 GDS points. which I think will have coaches looking at him as an option this week with those bye rounds. We've got reduced players on there. He'll be sort of at the top of the list. He looked really good as well. So I think that he'll be popular this week for coaches looking for that option. And they face the Suns at the MCG. It doesn't scream the greatest of matchups. Like they're typically relatively restrictive to opposition defenders. The highest score we've seen so far against the Suns in the first 2 weeks of footy have been 107 points from Liam Duggan. And in opening round, no cat went over 100 GDS points against them. That's defenders, sorry. And in saying that, outside of Tom Stewart, like they don't really have a huge ball distributor out of that back line. Like Lawson Humphreys does a little bit. But I think other teams like a Jaden Short, for example, he's that clear distributor for the Tigers, or at least at the moment anyway. He's just got a market share of that footy, and if you can get back to some of those previous ways we've seen before, where he's put up scores of 120, 123, and 151, they're 3 scores against the Suns in his past 5 meetings against them, then he could be a really good play. My only thing there is that those scores, they're from the old Gold Coast Suns. They're not reflective of the team that they've sort of morphed into. So I wonder if he can do that against them and how good they're going and just how many weapons they've got. And the other thing for me was sort of Sam Banks as well. He's clearly got a good ball user down there for the Tigers, and absolutely Sam Grill. So there's a little bit of footy back there, and I think Jaden Short's the one you'd be going for out of the 3 in a standard competition. But he did look good, and I think he'll be a popular play this week for coaches.
Yeah, exactly. But I'm looking at a point of difference there. I think we need to talk about my boy.
Your boy. How many all squads have you got him in?
I do actually. I do this week. I've got him in a number of squads.
Yeah, so do I.
I think I'm just having a look. I'm pretty sure he's in my classic squad at the moment. He's not going to put up a 140, 150 in GameDay Squad for us, but he's going to be just safe, reliable. He's probably going to put up a 105 to maybe 120 points, probably somewhere I'd put him around there. But I've got him in most, not as much salary as some other players there, but I've got him in the squads, and the Dogs can give up some points to defenders, as we know. So I think that he'll be someone that we're targeting, and probably someone just to put on the watch list from the Crows just to see if he goes well again is Wayne Miller. He had a really good game last week. Does he sort of play well again this week? We'll see how it goes. But I think Lairdy's the guy that probably doesn't rely too much on other guys around him. So I think he'll go well.
Yeah, and I'm the same there with you on that as well. 123 GDS points last week, 11 marks, 19 kicks. We know what he's done in the past as well, and how good a proven fantasy player he's been. He's averaged 107, 113, 124, and 138 GDS points in the past 4 seasons. Obviously, that shift has probably reflected the change in that Adelaide side and who they've turned to in their midfield. But I feel more comfortable with him if I'm targeting this matchup for defenders than I would feel with a Wayne Miller. I think, I didn't get to watch that game, mate, and what you think, but could Wayne Miller be a pod in himself this week? Like, do you trust that he'll be able to back up with something similar again, or was that a bit of a flash in the pan?
No, I think that there could be something there. Whether that's going to be something that reflects into our GameDay squads week to week is something. But he took, I think, the most kick-ins with 7. So with Keane being out, I think one thing I know is the Crows don't really have a designated kick-in taker. They just go whoever's closest just takes it. But Miller, he took the 7 last week. Worrell took 3, Murray 2, and then Laird, I think, had 1. So, but that was the best game I've seen him play for a long time, and it's the first preseason he's had where he's played the full season before for a long time. He's normally had a year. Next year he'll get injured, or it'll be like a big injury. Whereas this year he started well and he looked great. So very much like his cousin, if I'm not mistaken, in Nasai. Looked a little bit like Nasai, and I was thinking if we got Nasai on the field tonight because he was playing quite well. So if he can keep doing that, he could present as an option. But I don't know if I'm ready to go there just yet, unless you're really ballsy and you want to go there.
Yeah, exactly. It's going to take a bit of guts, I reckon, to go there. Another pod I like there on screen is Nick Blakey. I think some coaches might sort of overlook him. He had a nice 112 against the Lions for the pickings in round 2. So they face the Hawks this week at the MCG, and it doesn't scream like an amazing matchup. But if you actually go back and look at the historical data that Blakey's put up against the Hawks, they've actually been a pretty good matchup for him in the past. Yes, we've only seen one player put up a good score against them in the back line this year, and that's been Mason Redman. And I saw a comment in the chat as well about a Mason Redman and the fact he could be a play this week. And I don't mind it at all for a Mason Redman. He had a great score last week. But I feel like the Lizard actually plays a very similar role to a Mason Redman, and the fact is that running defender for them, and he can accumulate the footy, and he's put up scores of 111 and 156 against the Hawks in his past two. And the 156 GDS points was against the Hawks at the MCG. So in both of those games, it was off that high kick to handball ratio. He had 21 and 26 kicks respectively. So I really do like him this week as a potential play in our backlines for round two. And I don't mind the Mason Redmond shout at all. And just in the interest of time, mate, to keep moving for us, that one to avoid. Are you in agreement with me there around Colby McKercher? There's a lot of chat around him this week in terms of what we can expect for him, but I'm of the belief that maybe we should be not looking to put him in our sides. I sort of thought this preseason that he's every chance in the role, that halfback role. He could give that top 7 defenders a nudge in GameDay Squad, but unfortunately, he just copped that really last minute role change. And yeah, when teams were released on Thursday night, he was named on the bench, and there were rumours he'd been training for the midfield. We saw Luke Parker and that debutant Blamires. They lined up down back for the Roos, so it just meant that Colby was playing in a really poor role, that mid-forward role, which is not conducive to his best fantasy game, which I think, that mid-role will be good for him eventually, but not at the moment. So, just that low time on ground, 69%, low CBAs, it really just culminated in a poor 46 GDS points. And I don't think we can be even looking at playing him until we see the likely shift of something else happening in that squad. What are your thoughts around McKercher, mate? Do you reckon some coaches could still go there this week, or do you reckon we're probably better off looking elsewhere?
Well, my response to the question is just edit the 60 seconds you just said and put that into my answer, because pretty much everything you said is exactly what I would say as well. Just if anyone is tuned into the AFL Fantasy Fanatics, they'll know my thoughts on Colby. I was pretty disappointed with picking my AFL Fantasy side, and I didn't go him in GameDay Squad just with that thought of I want to watch a week or two first. And West Coast, you'd think prime matchup. This is what Colby's going to do. I think it was last year he played West Coast, and that was when he moved to halfback. And unfortunately, just he looks to be back in that mid forward role. Hardiman should be back this week for North Melbourne. I think George Wardle could even be back. So there's a midfielder and a defender going in. That'd have to be like 3 defenders dropped for Colby to go back into defence. So that's not going to happen when they won. So yeah, I'm not on Colby until we see a role shift, either halfback or if it was a full-time mid-role and he was able to score. We saw maybe a few weeks of scoring, but I just think he's going to play that 30, 40, maybe 50% CBAs at best. I don't think I see much more than that. So yeah, unfortunately can't pick him.
Yeah, and they won as well, the other side of the coin to what St Kilda are doing with Naz. Like, there's no reason why they need to do anything different with Colby, because they had such a good win over Port. So, yeah, I'm glad we're sort of that similar thought there, mate. And, yeah, it's still some good defenders to go this week too. So, any love for Sicily? Yeah, he's had a great couple games, and I think you can definitely go there as an option. And we've already sort of spoken about Redmond as well. So, we might move on to the midfielders, mate. And I know you said you might have to...
Yeah, just got out of like in like 20 minutes or so. But I was going to say with Redmond, you got to play him at least in the squad, right? You got to put him in the FantasyBro Sunday Showdown. He's plays on Sunday, so you got to check him in.
I've got his platinum. Yeah, I've got his platinum sitting in there, so I'm ready to go for that one. He'll be one of the better options for that week for sure. Now, I know again you've got to head off soon. I don't know where to start because I've got a few questions I want to ask you. And probably there's one big one that revolves around the forward line this week. So we might try and knock out these mids pretty quick and then jump across to the forward line, and then you'll be probably good to go if you reckon.
Yep.
In terms of the midfielders there on screen, like you can see, we've got Bont, Noah Anderson, Jordan Dawson. I think they're probably 3 players you could easily look at this week. And we've obviously seen that Noah Anderson will have a really good matchup this week against the Tigers. So I like him. But another 3 options there you've got Zach Butters, Zachy Merritt, and Finn Callahan as well. In terms of Zach Butters, we probably don't need to talk too much about him. He had a good matchup last week. He only put up 106 GDS points, so a little bit disappointing. But he comes up against the Bombers this week at home, and I think that a player like Zach Butters, who loves to bully teams, they're back on their home deck. I think this screams a big score, and I want a piece of it, and I don't want to be leaving him out of my side. Out of the other couple there on screen, what are your thoughts on Zach Merritt?
Well, funny enough, because obviously with all these good options on buy and obviously a few injuries, I've actually got the 3 plug and plays we got being Bont, Anderson, Dawson, and I've got all 3 of Butters, Merritt, and Callahan because I think the midfield is pretty easy this way. I think they're the 6 you play. I think that they're the 6 good options that have all got those ceiling scores, and I think really you put it's really down to who you put on that bench spot. Is it one of the points of difference you got there? Have you got another point of difference you've got? I've actually got one that's not on the screen there, but just quickly on Butters, I think, yeah, big score coming here. I wouldn't be shocked if Port had a big win here. Essendon didn't look great last week against Hawthorn. Is that just the case they weren't, they looked better in the first quarter, but are they going to struggle again, particularly Adelaide Oval against Port? They're going to want to respond there. And Butters is the sort of player that's going to punch out a good score, I think. So I think he'll go quite well. Merritt, I think, safe, and we saw he's not affected by the tog or any change in role or anything. So I think he's in there. And Finn Callan first, did he play opening round? I think he did, yeah. So he's had a couple of weeks now to sort of have a bit of match fitness. So I think this will be a game where he could potentially go well. Maybe Windhager goes to him if they decide to do any attention there, but I think Callahan's still a good option there. And I see Skip asking about Sarong. I don't know about you, Pitty, but I think I'm just with Freo, right? Even Brayshaw and the points of difference there, I'm just off Freo. I like particularly Sarong, who can get attention, and Tholstrup went to Nasai last week and kept him pretty quiet, and I wouldn't be shocked if he went to Sarong this week. So, yeah, I'm a bit nervous with those Freo mids.
So am I. I've got Sarong sitting in my side on that bench at the moment, but even in Classic, it's just a bronze, and I'm not confident. And it's that last spot I'm really tossing up and not quite sure what to do with that there. And has sort of raised the idea of a Took Miller there on screen. He could be a little bit of a pod play there against the Tigers. He's put out some really good scores so far this season, 106 and 121 as well. He's got a nice little role there as well, and the Suns are just humming too. So the points in terms of what the Tigers give up, they give plus 12 points to defenders, plus nearly 10 points to midfielders, plus nearly 9 points to rucks and 3 points to forwards. There's just points everywhere. Probably didn't see that last week, but I think that was probably more of a Carlton thing than it is a Richmond thing. So I feel that the Suns will have another good performance. So does Hazard, and there's every chance that Took Miller could be a little solid play. And mate, I played All-Star Andy Brayshaw in my Challenger side last week just because I had his All-Star. Absolutely burned me. I could not believe it. And it hurt me putting him as a pod, just given the score last week. 68 GDS points, and that included a goal. And he gave away 4 free kicks, which I thought was really interesting too. So here's my thinking. No, coach is going to do 2 things after seeing that score. First thing they're going to do, they're going to throw up a little bit in their mouth and they'll start to feel a bit nauseous like I did on the weekend when I saw his score. And number 2, they won't play him in their squad. But coming up against Melbourne this week at home, they're a slightly positive matchup to opposition mids and going through, I know they're not a great fantasy scoring side, but they've been the 5th favourite team for Brayshaw to score points on. And the last 2 times they played the Demons, he's put up 125 and 137 GDS points, with the 137 being at Optus Stadium. And it's not something to hang your hat on either, but Sarong went well last week and Brayshaw didn't. Could it flip this week? Could Sarong cop potential? Brayshaw goes really well. That's the problem with Freo. We just don't know. And that's why I put him there as a pod.
He's the ceiling play. If you want the ceiling play, it's Brayshaw, because he's probably the one out of Took and him that can go. I think Took's probably capped just with the role he's playing. I think he's a little bit like Laird, but in the midfield, right? He's a safe, probably 100, 110 most weeks and can pop for the odd 120. But I think Brayshaw's a guy that could give you 80, but he could also give you 140, 150, right? So that's the thing with Brayshaw that worries me. I will give you one pod that you don't have on the screen, though. Jai Caldwell.
Yeah,
I really like what I saw in the first half. He would have been on mid-90s in GDS at halftime, but just tog, and I don't know what Brad Scott was thinking in the second half. So maybe if that was just a mistake and Caldwell does what he did a bit more from the first half in a full game, and I think he put up a good score. So I do like him, and I do like the one you've put to avoid there as well in Dylan Stevens. I know that if you, particularly maybe new users to GDS that have just signed up, don't be sucked into one big score from a player that hasn't typically been sort of there or thereabouts. Like Dylan Stevens been a winger in and out of North's team. I think you'll have a good year, and I think you'll sort of break out into that best 23 for North, but not someone I don't think we're looking to target in GDS. And what's the bet? In a month's time, he'll be averaging 110 points, and we'll be going, now we got to play him in our squads.
Oh, it'll look that way too. I'm not even playing him in my Sunday competition. Here's a few scores for you from last year. You'd know this anyway, Bales, but again, for maybe some of our new users, he played above 80% time on ground last week. When he's gone above 80% time on ground, here are some of his low scores: 55, 43, 29. There's some of the scores that he can give you, and that's in GameDay Squad as well. Yeah, just that wing role, like it can be really conducive to a high score, but it can be really cold as well. And Dylan Stevens hasn't been a proven fantasy player. So, I completely agree with you on that. And before we wrap up the mids there, mate, in terms of Andy Brayshaw, the other thing that I sort of thought could tip in his favour is that like there wasn't really a role change last week. Like he had, in terms of his CBAs, he had 82% CBAs and 80% time on ground. It's about what he's been doing like each game, really. And I think, it's not one I'm super confident in, but if you are looking for a pod with a bit of a ceiling, like it could be an Andy Bray play. And before we do move on, mate, sorry, you go.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I think I saw something that Hayden Young could be out this week. Dad ruled a Freo tweet about an hour or so ago that he's been ruled out this week with a hamstring strain. So does that add maybe a bit of a bump for him? Maybe. So that could be something there. But yeah, just Freo.
You're not doing with confidence. Yeah.
Too many questions with Freo, I think.
Correct. And you can add him to that injury list on the side there. Obviously, Errol Goulden and Isaac Heaney out, unfortunately, too, this week for the Swans. So I've currently got Sarong sitting on my bench, which, again, I'm not confident with. But who have you got currently sitting on your bench then? Is it the Jai Caldwell?
Yeah, I got Jai Caldwell, because I've got the 3 plug and plays and the 3 options that we've got at the top there. And then I've got Jai Caldwell on my bench at the moment. I have looked at Tuke as the other one, but it's probably him and Caldwell for me, probably gonna be there. I would want to play Brayshaw, just unsure about what Freya's going to do.
Yeah, exactly. I'll roll his All-Star in Challenger again, but I'm not playing him anywhere else. And I was looking for an option other than Sarong too. I'm not sold on that one, so we'll have to see. I'm going to jump to the forwards, mate, if you don't mind, and we'll do that one really quick. Going to get your insight on a couple of things.
I was going to say, I think Rucks, it's what English is locked, I think, for everyone. He's the plug and play. And then I think it's probably Gawn, probably the next one. Maybe Jackson if you want to go there, but Jackson against Gawn is tough. And like you're probably going real potty if you want to go for Wits to Coning like that, because I think the Rucks are, you got your 4 or 5 guys you plug and play most weeks. So I think, is that who you've got? Have you got English and Gawn? I think Cherry's another one as well for a shout, but who have you got?
Yep. I don't mind Jackson this week either. Just sort of seeing what happened on the weekend in terms of that. But I think they're probably the 3. Yeah, English, Gawn, Jackson. I like those 3. Cherry's got a good matchup this week though. But I'll circle back to these rucks as well and go through a bit of data with everyone once we do the forwards as well. Because I think there's a few forwards this week, particularly from your mob, that I'm keen to get your insights on and how they might go. And then, once we talk about these, mate, and you head off, I'll circle back to the rucks for everyone and we'll go through in a bit more detail what we're sort of thinking. You can sort of see on screen there in terms of our forwards, those plug and plays. We've obviously all got Sheasel, Petrarca, Flanders, and probably Toby Green, I would imagine, as well as a Cozzy Pickett. You could almost put him in there at the moment. So I've got those boys all locked in, and it's really the last 2 spots that I have up for grabs. And there's a fair few players that have got under the blanket for those last couple of spots this week. On that screen there, I think Rankin was one I've put in pretty quickly to my squads. But I know that he and Rochelle probably go hand in hand, don't they? It's I just wonder with Rankin coming back how that might affect Rochelle's role, and he looked really good last week going through that midfield. Will they maybe impact each other? It's just a bit of a watch and wait. And what are you thinking on Isaac Rankin? Is he coming straight into your squads this week? Are you backing in that sort of star factor for him and what he brings to the Crows?
Well, for the stats at primetime squads, yes, he will be. Both will be in there, actually, in fact. But in terms of my classic squad, I don't actually have either at the moment. Mainly just because I do want to see how it goes. I think they're both fine players. I think Rochelle and Rankin are both good plays. I think, again, if I was Matty Nix, I would have one spot in the midfield purely with either Rankin or Rochelle in there at all times. So it's like 50-50 split. Maybe you have a few CBAs where you don't have one of them in there. But I think most CBAs, they'll have one of them in there because they offer something different. I think Rankin back in will actually help Rochelle and help Dawson. I think another good ball user through the middle of the ground and then up forward. I think I see it more maybe this week being Rochelle more the mid and Rankin more the forward. And that might be more of a 50-50 split as we get a few weeks into the season. But I think to start, I think it'd be more like, say, Rochelle maybe 65%, Rankin 35% if they're doing that sort of split with them 2 in the midfield. So I do like both, but either or could go quite well. So I think that's probably where I'd land on them. I think either could be good plays, both could be good plays. You could fade both, I think. I don't think they're going to burn you either if you fade one. I don't see one of them going 120, 130 against the Dogs.
Yeah. It's probably the forwards at the moment, isn't it? Those last few forwards we're really picking from. Like, even the last couple of weeks, they've all sort of washed out to be, fairly close together. Riley Thilthorpe is probably another one I was looking at too.
Midfielder,
Crows.
apparently.
I think that. Oh, really? Playing in the midfield?
I just had some CBAs as a midfielder, not a ruck, just as a midfielder, which is quite interesting. Maybe being like another unicorn into the AFL sort of space. So we'll see if that goes. But potentially he could be a play because Doggies don't have many of those tall defenders that can probably go with him, and vice versa. Darcy at the other end, right? Is that mate? I think Butts did a fairly good job against Darcy last year, but can you keep Darcy quiet back-to-back games against the Crows? So I think both. I think there's so many options in that game, like Buderick as well, who's playing off half back. Like you could plug him in for a week. So there's so many options in that game that I think that's why we're all excited for that as well.
Yep. Yeah, exactly. So that's probably my big question this week is where are we going to go in that forward line? And it's those last two spots I've got up for grabs. I've got Sam Darcy sitting there at the moment, which our viewers will see a little bit later when I show the contender squads for the week. But yeah, Sam Darcy, he's played a couple good games in the past, or at least put up a couple good scores against the Crows. So he's had 96 GDS points against their last matchup, against them round 18 last year. And before that, at the end of 2024, he put up 107 GDS points. And that was actually, he kicked 1 goal 5 that game, and that was at Adelaide Oval. So I think that he's one that I might be playing. I was impressed with him against the Lions. I thought he had a very poor game, and he still put up, nearly 80 GDS points. So I think if that's his floor and just the threat he poses forward of the ball, and as you said, if they don't have that really big, key, tall defender to look after him, then I think he could be someone we're looking at too. And yeah, I'm glad you mentioned Connor Buderick. He's one I was meant to actually change that on screen for Rochelle. We were going to talk about Rochelle with Rankin, and Connor Buderick is the other pod that we had. I just didn't get a chance to pop him in there for us, and he's been playing really well off that half back line, even though he's listed for us as a forward. He's put up some really good scores there for us in those first 2 rounds. And interesting though, his kicking numbers dropped last week against the Giants. He only took the 1 kick in, but he still managed to get 23 disposals, and 16 of those were kicks with 6 marks. So he's scoring pretty well, and we know that could be something that we like to target in our obviously our defenders, but he's available as a forward. So if he's doing that, he could be a nice little play there. But I don't know, just something about Buderick. I don't know, a little bit spider sense as a team.
I think it's just his ceiling's capped. I think he's not because of Dale being back there. Even Lockie Jakes, who's been really good for the Dogs as that younger player coming through.
He's had a heap of ball. Yeah.
I think they're the 2 guys that they like. I think they want to get the ball in all 3 of those guys' hands, and I just think that they'll share it evenly. They'll all score okay, but I just think it's caps. It's like you can play him, you'll get a okay score, but I don't think you're going to get a 120, which Rankin, Darcy, Cozzy, Rochelle, like even Dylan Moore, who haven't spoken about, could all go well. The question for me though that I've got to you. So you've got Justin McInerney there as one to avoid. He's someone I'm actually keen on this week of playing.
Yeah, again, we had a chat about this too. We initially did this. I didn't get a chance to fix this slide with Haz. We made a couple of little changes there for it. That was one thing I didn't get around to. We were initially looking at fading him there, and then probably just off the back of those first couple games, we've been pretty staunch in like, no, we can't trust it yet. But we have sort of changed that. We took him out, and the avoid we had was actually one from the Crows. We actually put in Alex Neil-Bullen. So Haz did a bit of digging around some data on Alex Neil-Bullen. And it's probably a similar conversation for A and B in terms of what we spoke about with Dylan Stevens. He had a really high score last week of 117 GDS points against the Pies. And coming up against a tough, Bulldogs outfit where we're not confident that he'll be one to chase for that score to round out our forward lines. But McInerney, we've actually sort of changed our opinions there on him too, and we probably don't mind that play this week in itself. Are you believing he's a genuine option as well to round out our forward lines? Because I wasn't sold in that first week.
I've got him in. Sydney Clear have put him in a bit of that midfield role, and Heaney and Goulden won't be there this week. Obviously, Goulden won't be there for a while, and I think it was really Goulden and McInerney were sort of changing in that midfield between the 2 mid forward. But I think with Goulden out, McInerney's going to get a bump in CBAs. And I think particularly again with Heaney, I think that even solidifies that role. So I think that there's a really good play of putting Justin McInerney into your squads. That's why he's in there. Just quickly on Neil-Bullen as well. he's someone that if you play other fantasy platforms like AFL fantasy, like if you play draft, like he's a good draft pick. He's even probably not a bad pick in the stats as prime time competition this week. But he wouldn't be someone I'd be relying on in your classic teams, your contender teams, your starter champion challenger, whatever company you play. I wouldn't be relying on those ones because he can be very up and down. He can have games where he'll pop like he did on the weekend, but he can also have games where he gets a 60 or 70, and you don't really want that. You want a bit more consistency. That's why Rochelle, Rankin, and then other options from other teams who you're probably targeting.
That's it. And I think when Haz and I were having those discussions about McInerney, a big thing for us was the fact it was, up against the Hawks at the MCG. And this was obviously before the news that have come out that, Heaney's going to be out too. We know the extent of Goulden's injury. So that's where we ended up changing our decision on, obviously that's actually probably going to help him, to be honest. So we did change our mind, but as I said, I didn't get a chance to change it around on the slide this afternoon. I changed around a few other things and forgot to come back to that one. So I apologise. So McInerney's not our one to avoid. We think he could be one to target potentially. And yeah, as I said, they're mentioning, maybe avoiding Alex Neil-Bullen, who had that pop score. And Dylan Moore, obviously, you were onto him last week, mate. He put up a good score. I feel like coaches might still be a little bit hesitant with him just on the nature of his scoring at times. He's been a bit up and down recently, obviously having that really poor, 43 points or 47 points, one of those in opening round, 47. So that was really disappointing, but he bounced back really well last week. So 117 GDS points, which was a vintage Dylan Moore performance, 24 touches, 17 of those were kicks, 7 marks. They're coming up against the Swans now, who are a bit of a neutral matchup. That's the 11th best matchup there, so to speak. And his last matchup against the Swans there, he put up 89 GDS points from 18 disposals there and only 3 marks. So I think he might hopefully be able to get on the end of a few more marks this week as well, and hopefully putting up a decent score. So he could be one to potentially look at in that forward line if you are going a little bit different, because I feel like a few might get off him.
Yeah, he loves a G, so I think he'll score quite well.
Absolutely. So you've got McInerney in there. Who else is rounding out? Is it a Dylan Moore again this week after what he did for you?
Yep. I've got Dylan Moore currently at the moment. So I've got the Sheasel, Petrarca, Flanders, the usual 3, and then Toby Green as the 4 plug and plays, and Cozzy Pickett, Justin McInerney, then Dylan Moore rounds out my forward line. I have thought about putting a Crows forward in there. I'm probably leaning Rochelle at the moment with the more midfield time, but I'll partly go, I don't want to play either, because if I play one, the other will go well, right? So I think that's how we know how that goes in fantasy. We play one and the other one end up going quite well. So we're talking about the midfield with Brayshaw, right? What's Bet Sarong is the one that pops and goes big. So it's what happens, unfortunately, in fantasy. So I think I'd rather just cheer him on as a Crows fan and hope they both go well, but have another couple options in there. But I might change. We'll have to see.
Yeah, absolutely right. Now, mate, are you looking to head off now, or are you going to stick around a little bit longer?
Yeah, unfortunately, I do have to head off. But no, appreciate you having me on, mate, and more than happy to jump on in future episodes. If you ever need a fill-in or an emergency, come in. If I need the coach to ring up and say, we need you to plug and play, I'm more than happy to jump on. But no, always happy to chat GameDay Squad, and good to chat on with you, mate. So good luck to everyone in GameDay Squad this week. Hope your squads go well. Hope you go well in the Cup, and hope you go well in any competition that you play. And except for my Cup opponent competition, I hope I get you by point this week or get the job done. But we'll see how we go. But no, thanks for having me on, mate.
That's it. Thanks for joining, and best of luck to you too, mate, this week. And looking to hear you hopefully getting that victory at the end of the round too in your classic matchup.
Beautiful.
But have a good one, mate. Thanks again.
Beautiful. Thanks, mate. Thanks, everyone.
All righty. Now, as Bales jumps out, I'll circle back to the rucks. I was just keen to get his input there on a few of the forward options there, because there's a few I like. And as I said, there's the Adelaide forwards, there's just a heap to be looking at. So if we circle back to the rucks here, there's a heap of options, and I apologise for the jumping and the chopping around there as well. Just tried to fit that in with Bales. In terms of our matchups there, I think everyone's playing Timmy English this week, so he'll be a very popular play, making sure that we plug him into our squads, that's for sure. But if we look at some of those other options there as well, Maxi Gawn, he had a cracking game last week, and I think he's just a really solid play. We know what we're going to get from Max Gawn. It was an inspirational effort last week from the captain, and Tom De Koning probably had the best of him for the first 3 quarters of that match, but just a massive 91% time on ground, which Maxi Gawn does, and it was 100% time on ground in that 4th quarter. Like, he did not come off, and he comfortably helped turn the momentum of that game against the Saints. And in that fourth quarter alone, he had 61 GDS points from 10 touches, 3 marks, 12 hitouts, and a goal. So, he may have come up against TDK, who's considered one of the best young rucks in the game, but the old dog showed him a few tricks when it mattered most. And finished on 121 GDS points, and it's just a sign that he's as fit as ever. So if you're looking at your rucks and you're tossing up between a few, I think Gawn's probably the safe play. And coming up against Freo this week, he's put 138 points on them last season too. So he should be another very solid play. And Tristan Xerri, he's probably that point of difference this week. I think less will be playing him. A few might be drawn to him for that matchup. They obviously are coming up against the Eagles there. The Eagles are an incredible matchup. They are the easiest matchup for ruckman based on last year's data. They allow 113.6 GDS points on average to opposition rucks. That's last year. And that was 16.4 points above that league average. So just incredible numbers that they offer up. And I'll tell you what, Big Witsy, a few people called this out last week and I was against it just on the wits factor alone, but he put up 129 GDS points against the Eagles. And that was thanks to 51 hitouts. And before I talk any further about what else he put up, if you're getting 51 points, if you're saying you're starting on 51 points, well, you're in for probably a good score. So to think that, Tristan Xerri could potentially have something like that again this week as his starting score and anything else he does on top, that's a really juicy play in our ruck line if you're looking at it. If you're not keen on a Jackson v. Gawn, if you're not sure to go either one of those, a Tristan Xerri could be a play. Just again, the thing is he's not looking amazing with those hitouts, with the new rules around having to jump at the contest. But as I said, Witsy's probably in a similar boat, right? So I think he could be a really good play this week if you're looking at that in your ruck line. And then chuck in the chat too. Who are you keen on in the ruck line? Who are you looking at outside of Tim English? Who have you locked into your ruck line this week across your competitions? Because I think Luke Jackson will also be popular. I think a few people would mention Luke Jackson is going to be a popular ruck this week. But I just wasn't convinced on him last week. And not that I wasn't convinced. I know he's got the talent. I know he's got a nice midfield role. But I just wasn't sure what that role would look like. What is it exactly? We know that when Sean Darcy's in the side and when Sean Darcy's fit, we know Luke Jackson doesn't typically get a lot of time in the ruck. So that was my only flag, and I just wasn't keen to go there first up. I just wanted to watch and wait and see what that looks like. Even though the Cats are probably a good matchup for opposition rucks, I just wasn't confident what time he would get. Well, he certainly repaid coaches if you went there, if you were confident. He scored 140 GDS points for you, and that was off 27 disposals, 2 marks, 8 tackles, and 22 hitouts, plus a goal. He absolutely dominated in that first half, and from memory, he was on, over 80 points at halftime. So he was incredible. And if you actually look at that role a little bit closer, this is what I like this week. So I don't mind playing a Luke Jackson this week. I've currently got him in a couple squads, but as I was talking to Bales, it's probably that last ruck spot, it's the last midfield spot, and it's the last 2 forward spots. They're the ones for me that I'm tossing up. I'm settled on my defenders. I'm just not sure which way I'm going to go yet, and you'll see my contender side soon. But in terms of Jackson, the thing I did like, that 78% time on ground was good. He attended 65% of the CBAs. That's fine as well, but it was the ruck time for me. He attended 56% of his team's ruck contests, nearly 60%, which is incredible, despite Sean Darcy being in the side. And last week when we were talking about Luke Jackson, we weren't sure what Mason Cox's role was going to be, and it turns out he wasn't in the side. So, if you look at Sean Darcy himself, he was 45% time on ground, so very low tog. He was on the bench most of it, really. Attended 47% of his CBAs and, attended 43% ruck contests. So I think that Jackson's a very reliable play without being that sole ruck. And I think outside of Luke Jackson, in that Freo side, I probably agree that with Bales, I think I'm not a massive fan of what Freo does with their fantasy scoring, but Luke Jackson should be a bit of a play, and he does love the Demons as well. He is the favourite matchup that Luke Jackson likes to play in terms of his ability to score GDS points. So definitely a play for this week. And there's a good question there in the chat as well. I may have missed it, but who is there, or are there any under 22 ruck options? And the answer is yes, there is one. So we have Cooper Duff Tytler, who's a young Eagles ruckman. He played last week, scored pretty well too, actually. So we've got young Edwards from the Cats. He's on a bye this week. You've got Duff Tytler, who can be on your bench there for the ruck. So if you've got a Duff Tytler card, play him. He'll be the only one available. Spot on there, Nate Daddies. If you don't have him, you'll have to try and find one or just roll without, knowing that that will then drop off. If we look at those points of difference, Jared Witts again has got another good matchup. Again, I'm probably not going there. I know he put up 129 last week and he took full advantage of that matchup. And Richmond are the fifth easiest matchup. That's who they're playing. They allow about 106 GDS points on average to opposition rucks, which again, that's 8.8 GDS points above the league average. And, big Mark Pitty, Mr. Worldwide, he put up 87 GDS points last week against the Tigers while sharing those ruck duties with Hudson O'Keefe. So Witty scored 82 and 89 against them last year. Last two times they've played. I'm just not a massive fan of that play this week, although you could go there if you are looking for something a little bit different. And Tom DeConnie is probably the other one. I like TDK a bit more than I do a Jared Witts. And, despite Maxi Gawn giving TDK an absolute lesson in ruck craft in that final quarter when it mattered, he did have the better of Gawn throughout the day, and he looks good, a bit like Jackson around the ground with these new rule changes. He had 93 GDS points thanks to the 15 disposals, 6 marks, 3 tackles, 21 hitouts, which is pretty good, and 96 GDS points in that first round. The only thing for me, if there is two scores, does he have the ability to put up a ceiling score that can match a Gawn, a Jackson, or a Cherry, who are probably playing in that second spot? I'm just not sure that's the case. They do play against GWS, though. They're the second easiest matchup for opposition rucks last season. They allow an average of 109.3 GDS points. We had Timmy English last week go really well. He scored 141, I think, from memory, 141 GDS points. The only thing is, I think that's put an asterisk next to that, because obviously Tim English is the best ruck in the comp, and you can't look at that score and expect TDK to do something similar. But it might just mean that maybe there's a bit more meat on the bone than the 93 and 96 points he's put up in those first 2 rounds. So if you've got an inkling to go with TDK, he's another pod we don't mind. And Brodie Grundy was just off him this week, just looking at that matchup and what he did last week. So he's coming off statistically his worst game since round 7 last season, scoring just 61 GDS points on the weekend against the Lions. And I think I was a little bit kissed there. I went to go play a Darcy Cameron instead. I didn't quite look at a Brodie Grundy last week against the Lions. I wasn't keen on the matchup. So I avoided the 61, but I didn't quite get the bang for buck choosing Darcy Cameron. So I'm happy to take that, the extra 40 points I got from Darcy Cameron, but I still missed out on a Max Gawn, for example, or a Luke Jackson. So disappointing from Brodie Grundy, the big ruck pig, and he comes up against the Hawks this week. So it's the second hardest matchup going around for his career so far. In his 12 games against the Hawks, he's only averaged, in terms of GDS points, about 93 per game, so less than 100. And his last 2 matchups against the Hawks, he scored 74 GDS points in opening round last season and 81 GDS points in round 7 of 2024. So it doesn't look great. And also the fact that structurally they changed last week. They now go for the dual ruck setup in Big Reek and Ned Reeves as well. So they limited Lockie Blackiston to 58 GDS points, which again, a bit like Tim English before, I don't think we can look at a Lockie Blackiston and look at his 58 and say that's what we can expect from a Brodie Grundy, because again, Brodie Grundy is a very different player to a Lockie Blackiston. He's much more experienced and he's a genuine fantasy pig, but I just really think this is not a matchup to be looking at when we have the likes of a Gawn, a Jackson and a Cherry to be going for. So they're probably what I'm thinking about our rucks. And we've got Ross there in the chat. He's thinking Jackson, English and Gawn. I think you probably can't go wrong with either of those 3. It's probably just which 2 do you land on and how does the week pan out as well. That's probably what we're having to consider. And then jumping back across to the forwards, no more to talk about here, but I'll just highlight this chat in the comment from Janeth as well, our good mate there at Supercoach Swordplay. Love the Toby Green renaissance. Absolutely. He's just been a shining light for their midfield, and they got absolutely battered out of that midfield by the Bulldogs, but he never stops working. And I think as a forward line pick, if he's getting those midfield minutes, he's been super reliable. I think we'd just be playing him, each and every week at the moment, particularly when this week we've got reduced players on the bye. It's, as I said, there's a big blanket. There's a lot of players under it. And I'm just trying to decide who I'm going to actually end up playing. So we've got Connor McDonald is someone who we haven't spoken about, who's been really solid those first few weeks. I'm just not sure if I'm going there with that Hawthorn matchup. And I will reiterate what's on screen. That is not something I have updated. I apologise. We made some changes during this week once some news came out around the Sydney Swans. So do not avoid a Justin McInerney. He is a genuine play. Rochelle, we sort of took him out of our pods. We were going to discuss him with Isaac Rankin. So we think Rochelle is a good shout there. But the other pod we had in that forward line was a Connor Buderick. So just, again, reiterating those changes to those coaches who might have just joined us before and maybe missed that chat with Bales before. There are a few things on that slide there as well. So going to move on as well. We'll have a look at our contender teams here for everyone. These are the sides that we are happy to look at in round 2. So if you look there in the back lines, you'll find a very similar back line there to what Haz and I are both rolling out. So we've got those big name players in a Jack Sinclair, a Wanganeen Miller, an Ash, a Whitfield, a Connor Rosie, and a Rory Laird as well. It's just probably the one thing is Haz's contender side, as you can probably see from where he's currently ranked, that is his pod side. He throws a few darts there now, so he's looking at a few other players that we'll often talk about. So you can see he's going to roll with a Jaden Short. It's just a little bit of a point of difference, but I'm very confident on a John Noble, and I do not have room for a Jaden Short in my sides this week, unfortunately. In terms of the midfield, some similarities again. So Bontempelli, Merritt, Butters, you'll find them across our sides, as well as a Jordan Dawson, and then a Noah Anderson, Finn Callahan. And it's just that last spot, as I was talking to Bales, I'm not sold on a Caleb Sarong. I don't love that. I think he should be solid. He looked really good last week, and Bales mentioned that Sarong can often fail when he's given attention. Well, he got attention last week from a Tom Atkins. He got attention and he fought through for the first time, I think, in his career to actually put up a good score. And particularly, he did it in both phases of the game. So when the game was on the line and also when they were winning. So I think that does bode well. But again, it's a question of, Brayshaw is one that had a very down game. Is there a chance, because his role hadn't changed, is there a chance that maybe he gets the bump this week in his scoring and maybe a Sarong misses out as such? That's just a question I've got there. So I've got Sarong sitting there at the moment, but I'll be looking at some other options too just before we get to lockout. In terms of the rucks, he's got English and Gawn. I've got English and Jackson at the moment. And then in our forward line as well, Sheasel, Petrarca, Flanders, Pickett, Green, pretty solid plays. And then it's just where we're going after that for those last two. And yeah, the thing with Rankin there to round out my forwards on the bench, the thing that scares me a bit about Rankin is this is the first time we're seeing him for this season. So what is his role? We don't know what it's going to be. We've seen some teams do some funky things with players, with the 5-man on the bench, and we know he does spend some time forward of the ball as well. Rochelle's looked really good going through the midfield, so maybe there's not as much time through that midfield as we would like for an Isaac Rankin. So he's one that I'm every chance of changing, and I don't mind a big Riley Thilthorpe there too. I think that he's one who could have a pretty solid game against the Bulldogs there too. So I am looking at him, and I like the Justin McInerney shout there too. So Haz got Justin McInerney and a Connor Buderick to round out his forward line for his contender team, which again, some good pods there for Haz in that side. Whereas my contender side, I do try and sort of model that off a classic team and a challenger team, some similar picks. But yeah, I throw a few more darts in my challenger team compared to what Haz does. So yeah, chuck in the chat, who are you keen to play this week in your squads as well? Let us know. You can see the salary there on screen. I do my best in my contender team with the salary, but I also prioritize my classic team when it comes to salary, and then I try and throw the best cards I've got left over in that contender side. So let's jump on and have a look at our BroDown ShowDown. Janeth mentioned in the chat before, I got my first win in BroDown ShowDown. It's been a long time coming. I did shed a tear. I was very excited to get that win. And as you can see on screen, I absolutely towed Haz up. I thought there was every chance that Rosie was going to outscore Lockie Whitfield when I saw that Whit put up that 109. But he didn't, unfortunately, fell short. And obviously Tim English was a star, so he got that 141. And Sheasel just did Sheasel things. So I got there, and I was very, very happy with it as well to get that first win. So I'm going to jump across, and I'm going to share my screen. You're going to see the wheel there of those coaches that voted for me. So thanks for getting behind me. We're on there on screen. So we had Jeff, Cal, Bella, Peter Quicksilver, Michael Cossey, Maxi, and Mian as well. Now I've got a 9-player all-star common pack, and because I was so pumped to get that win, I'm just going to give away the whole pack to whoever wins this wheel. So best of luck to those on that wheel as I'm spinning it. Who's it going to be? I don't even think Cal can win that. I'm going to take that off him, and hopefully he's not too disappointed by that. But I will give him a shout out for backing me in. Let's have a look. I'll spin it again, and let's see who comes out on top with this all-star 9-player common pack. Will it be Janeth or Peter Quicksilver? Looks like Janeth. There we go, Janeth, mate. You are the winner of that All-Star 9-player common pack. So let's have a look. We'll jump across to GameDay Squad screen, and I'll get that up on my screen there for everyone. And we can have a look at who we're going to find. Hopefully we can pack an all-star. I mentioned before that in the chat earlier, Dill from the Fantasy Bros, he jumped in and he ripped the pack in AFL, and he pulled a Luke Jackson all-star. So he was very happy with that one. So Jana, thanks again for getting behind me, mate. Congratulations. Let's see who you've got. And all righty, who have we got? All right, silver, gold, silver. Again, all of these are going to Janeth, so I don't need to think about what row I'm going to give him. All right, let's have a look here. Let's do top row straight away. All right, Dolan, Henderson, Driscoll, nothing fantastic yet. A Silvani, Brown, and a Kieran Briggs as well. And our bottom row, a Torrent, a Berry, and a Ram. That is not fantastic, Janeth. I apologise, mate, and taking the whole pack there probably doesn't make that better, but if the Silvani or a Briggs, if that floats your boat, let me know and I can flick those across to you for sure. I apologise, there's nothing better in that one there, mate, but I will get those to you if you are keen for that. Now, I'm going to round out this episode as well, and we can finish off the show. Thanks again for everyone joining in. For our BroDown ShowDown for next week, we're doing round 2 this week, sorry. We're doing an under-22s edition. So we're going to go 3 under-22 players each, and Haz has taken Caleb Windsor in the back line, and I have taken Joe Fonte. In the midfield, he's taken Harley Reid, and I've taken Willem Dersma, so the 2 Eagles are going to go at it for us. And then in the forward line, this is probably going to be the highlight of the round. I think a Bailey Humphrey for Haz against my Murphy Reid. So only 3 players. So it's whoever takes out 2 wins across those 3 lines. Comment now in the chat. Who do you think is going to get up on top in this under-22s edition of the BroDown ShowDown? Do you think it would be Haz with Caleb Windsor, Harley Reid, and Bailey Humphrey? Or can I go back to back and can I really put Haz to the sword with my Joe Fonte, who's been in incredible form for our under-22s comp, Willem Dersma, and a Murphy Reid? Get in there now. Get your comment in. Who do you think it's going to be? And yeah, Janeth, mate, what a pack. I'm so sorry for that. I should not be ripping packs like that on a live stream, that is for sure. Few comments in the chat. Izzy, mate, thanks for you getting behind me again. And we've got Nate Daddies as well. And Janeth getting behind me as well. Fair few comments for me in the chat. If there's any love for Haz, make sure you chuck it in. Sometimes you never know. He is the out-of-form coach when it comes to BroDown ShowDown, and I've been letting him know all week. You can absolutely guarantee that. And we've got a comment there for Haz. Well done. Thanks, Driz. Get behind him. Now, that's the end of our episode. So again, thanks, guys. Thanks to everyone for tuning in, and obviously Bales too, who got behind our show there tonight. And we can't wait to bring you guys so much content with all these amazing people in the community that do so much work for fantasy footy, and particularly GameDay Squad. So next week, we're going to have Hoss from GameDay Society. He'll be joining us again. I got Roscoe as well from Supercoach Swordplay. He's coming the week after. So a nice rotation of guests to get some balanced views for everyone as we make the key decisions before each and every round. Just a reminder to our new coaches, make sure you use that sign-up code on screen if you haven't done so already, FBAR26. You'll get 3 9-player common packs for doing so. Get your contender team started, and hopefully they're better packs than what I just pulled there. So do not use that as an example. And yeah, again, thanks to everyone for tuning in. We really appreciate your support. Silver Pigeon, thank you, mate. Love seeing you in the chat every single week. Hey, we really appreciate it. And obviously Ross as well. Ross is getting behind us there for another week. So thanks, mate. Thanks for tuning in. And that round 3 preview show, as I said, Hoss from GameDay Society, he's joining us. That's next Wednesday, the 25th of March at 7:30 p.m. That's our round 3 preview. Good luck. Good luck for round 2. Good luck for the first round of the Cup. I hope everyone can come out winners, but we just know that's not the case in a Cup, unfortunately. And we'll see how we go after the weekend. All that said, have a great night. Thanks again for tuning in, and we'll see you next week.